So I've noticed that most of my pet peeves are related to masculine SI, the little things that annoy me. So I have an Etsy shop, and I was on Facebook in one of the Etsy seller groups where we sort of share information and mostly a lot of complaining about Etsy policies and nightmare customers. And there was a seller who had a question. As a buyer, what do you really like to see in listings? And when do you feel like a listing is a turnoff? You know, the seller isn't going to be successful in selling to you because this or that is wrong with their listing. It could be really bad photography, like poor lighting or incomplete descriptions or, you know, this and that. I realized that I knew instantly what turns me off of a listing when I'm looking on Etsy or Amazon or any seller is when there's missing SI information. It's usually like the specs are missing, some of the specs, like the dimensions. So you're buying a little doodad and it might be like a close-up, say like a close-up of this cup, and it could be a beautiful photograph. But if the seller doesn't have a picture like this of a hand holding the cup, so you can see this is a large cup. We have these neighbors that we go on double dates with, and they're both into ceramics, and the guy made this cup. It's a beautiful cup. But that's just for example, like say any object, and there's not a picture that in some way describes the scale, like a hand holding it or the object sitting next to a penny, or they don't have the actual dimensions like some centimeters or some inches or some millimeters or something to let me know how big it is, then I get frustrated and I move on, because that missing sensory information is just so annoying to me that I can't, as the buyer, have confidence in buying this product because I feel like I don't know what I'm really getting. Another area where it shows up is in buying patterns, sewing patterns. I usually buy PDFs, so they're downloadable digital patterns that I print on my regular 8.5 by 11 paper. Some sellers do not include a line drawing. So here's what a line drawing of the pattern looks like. It gives you a description of where the seams are and the line of the dress and how it would fall on the body. So they might have really beautiful images of a model wearing the dress. Maybe even they drove 30 miles out of town and they're in a beautiful meadow with the girl wearing a flowing dress. But if there's not a line drawing, I don't have a really good picture of where these seams are and where they fall. Now, they may do that because they have SI last and it's lack of attention to detail, or it could be a copyright thing. Like they don't want people to see the line drawing and copy that design. So some sellers are really creative and they'll have their object, and maybe you get like a really creative maker with lead NE, and they're like, oh, this listing is going to be epic. I'm going to do this epic photo shoot. I'm going to like hire a fog machine and make it look like the product is in a woodland forest and it's going to be so cool. Like my photos are really going to sell this item, but then they're missing some critical sensory information that just turns me off and I don't buy it. Another thing with patterns, if there's not a line drawing, that's a turn off. And then also they'll show the finished product on a model, but they'll make it in black fabric. So there again, I can't really see the seams. Black doesn't show up on the computer screen if the lighting isn't like super perfect. You can't see what's going on. It's like just a mass of black fabric. I can kind of see the way that it's falling on the model, but I can't see the details of the dress. Or they'll use like a highly patterned floral fabric. That is not appropriate for a pattern PDF listing. I cannot see what I'm buying if it's a floral patterned fabric and also there's no line drawing. I have lead NE, so there are certain leaps that I can make. So sometimes the seller might miss the detail of telling you how much yardage you will need for the product in the description of the product. So when you buy the PDF, probably they're going to tell you how much fabric you need because you need that information in order to buy the fabric from the fabric store. But I can kind of make the leap. If they don't include that number in the listing, I can look at the dress and I know how big I am, what my size is, and I can say like, this is a 3-yard dress, you know? But if they were being really thorough, they would list the size chart with the fabric yardage so that you know how much fabric yardage you need for that project. Because say, for example, you have a beautiful lace fabric and you know that it's 45 inches width and you know that you have 4 yards of it. You might be looking for a pattern specifically for that fabric. And maybe this is kind of a one-of-a-kind fabric. If you run out and you don't have enough, you can't order more of this fabric. So you're specifically looking for a dress pattern that will look good in lace and will also work for this limited amount of 45 width, 4 yards. So it is really frustrating for the buyer if some of the specifications are missing. And I see this even on Amazon. Like, regular people like me are Amazon sellers and they're just doing it wrong. It's incredibly frustrating. But I have to remember that, because that's a detail that irritates me about sellers that have that missing information. I'm probably doing something in my listings that irritates someone, and, you know, just like trying to identify those things. I know for sure that my product lines are not super cohesive because of the NE, because of the variety. It's like, oh, I want this object and I'm going to offer it in 13 colors, where like that isn't really necessary and it's actually overwhelming for the customer. A lot of times they want to see a listing that's like, okay, there's 3 color choices, because they get overwhelmed if there's too many choices. So that's a trap that I can fall into. A good thing to do in that case is do multiple listings, like maybe do 3 listings. This listing is 3 color choices and it's just like burgundy, gray, and navy blue, you know, really masculine kind of fall colors. This other listing is outrageous colors, maybe a lime green and a hot pink and white, maybe, you know, really fresh springtime. So you can break it up in that way so that it's visually less overwhelming for the person who's buying the product. So when I read through that post about the things that irritate people about listings, I could kind of identify like, oh, there's one that I'm doing that annoys people and it actually applies to my shop and I can change that. But the incomplete specifications, I just get so angry when I come across that. I'm just thinking like, what an idiot. What are you thinking? How could you possibly not include this? So when I make my listings, I have gauges, I have millimeters, I have a picture of the object in my hand, you know, just because it's important to me and I feel like that makes a better listing. So anyway, that's my rant of the week: incomplete specs on product listings.